right, everybody, get ready for a wild ride because today we are going deep, deep, deep into Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein.
Oh, yeah, one of the greats.
We are talking Martian culture, human nature, and perspective shifts that'll leave your head spinning. So buckle up because we're about to meet Valentine Michael Smith, a human raised by Martians.
Talk about a fish out of water story, right?
Exactly. So picture this. Smith's parents die tragically on Mars. He's raised by Martians, their customs, their way of thinking, everything. And then, boom, he's brought back to Earth as an adult.
Yeah, you think culture shock is bad here? Imagine being dropped into Earth from Mars. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. He's never even laid eyes on another human, let alone experienced Earth.
And that's where it gets really fascinating, right? We get this outsider's perspective on humanity, on everything we consider normal that we just never question. It's like Heinlein holds up this mirror to our own culture through Smith's eyes.
Exactly. It's like, what is it they say? You can't understand water until you've been out of it.
Okay, so Smith gets to Earth, and as you can imagine, everyone is freaking out, right? I mean, this is huge.
Understatement of the century. This is the first human being raised on another planet. Talk about a gold mine.
You've got scientists, politicians, religious leaders. Everyone wants a piece of the man from Mars.
Yeah.
But how do you even begin to approach someone like that? Someone with a completely different understanding of the universe.
And that's what Heinlein explores so brilliantly. It makes us ask, is he a scientific specimen to be studied? Or is he more like, I don't know, a cultural ambassador, someone we need to treat with sensitivity and respect? I mean, talk about an ethical minefield.
Oh, absolutely. And it doesn't help that Smith's arrival triggers this huge power struggle. Everyone wants to control him, to exploit him for their own agenda.
Classic, isn't it? The allure of the unknown can bring out the best and the worst in us.
Okay, so let's dive into some of the big ideas here, because there's a lot to unpack. First up, we got to talk about grokking. Now, I don't know about you, but this is one of those words that just sends chills down my spine.
Right. Grokking isn't just about understanding something intellectually. It's way deeper than that. It's about this total intuitive grasp of something, like merging with it, becoming one with it.
Right, like you don't just know it, you feel it on this deep, visceral level.
Exactly. Think of those rare moments of true empathy when you connect with another person, like really connect, heart to heart, mind to mind. That's getting close to the idea of grokking.
And for Smith, grokking is how Martians experience the world. It's just how they operate.
It's woven into the fabric of their being. Their whole culture revolves around grokking. And when Smith first arrives on Earth, he really struggles to grok anything, even something as basic as Earth's atmosphere.
Right, like just breathing is a challenge for him at first.
Exactly. It's like his senses are overwhelmed by everything. He's bombarded with stimuli he can't even process.
But then something amazing happens. He starts to grok. Human emotions, human concepts, things that seemed totally alien to him before.
It's like he's learning to speak a new language, but not with words, with his whole being.
It's so cool. Okay, another thing that blew my mind is the Martian concept of waiting.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Talk about patience. For Martians, waiting isn't some passive thing you do while you're, waiting for something else to happen. It's an active process.
It's like they embrace the waiting, they see it as an essential part of growth and understanding.
Exactly. They believe that rushing through life makes you miss the subtle but incredibly important things that reveal themselves in those quiet in-between moments. And that's something we humans could probably learn a thing or two about, right?
Okay, so we've talked about grokking and waiting, but we can't forget about the big God.
Right. Smith comes to Earth with this preconceived notion of God, right? Based on what he's learned from human writings that he found on Mars.
But his Martian upbringing, his whole way of grokking the universe, leads him to this entirely different understanding of what God is.
Right. He goes through this incredible evolution of thought, this spiritual awakening, if you will. And it all culminates in that powerful moment when he declares, "Thou art God."
And that one line, man, it just explodes the whole narrative wide open.
Totally. Because he's not just talking about a deity in the sky. He's talking about this divine spark that exists within everything and everyone. It's this really radical, almost pantheistic perspective on the divine.
It's like he's saying, we are all connected. We are all part of something much, much bigger than ourselves, which kind of makes you rethink the whole concept of religion, doesn't it?
It makes you question everything.
And speaking of questioning everything, let's talk about the water ceremony. I mean, Leave it to Martians to turn sharing a drink into a spiritual experience.
Right. Water holds this incredibly deep significance for Martians. It represents this essence of life, this interconnectedness of all things. So when they share water, it's not just a social custom, it's a deeply profound act of bonding, of grokking one another on a fundamental level. They call it becoming water brothers.
It's like they're acknowledging this shared essence that unites us all.
And that's something that really resonates with people, even here on Earth.
Okay, so to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Wait, we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much more to uncover.
Oh, I know. But we got to save some of the good stuff for next time, right? We've talked about Smith's Martian upbringing, his arrival on Earth, the concepts of grokking and waiting, and his evolving understanding of God. But trust me, things are about to get a whole lot more complicated, a whole lot more intense. So make sure you come back for part 2 of our deep dive. You won't want to miss it. So last time, we dove headfirst into this whole man from Mars thing, but it's more than just a cute nickname, right?
Oh, you better believe it.
Mhm.
Smith's not just some alien celebrity. This guy's the legal heir to Mars.
Okay, whoa, yeah, that changes things a bit.
Talk about a power shift. We're not just dealing with cultural differences anymore. We're talking about interplanetary politics, resources, the whole shebang.
Suddenly, everyone and their mother wants a piece of Valentine Michael Smith.
It's like sharks circling, right? Governments, corporations, all these powerful forces trying to reel him in, exploit his knowledge, his abilities, maybe even his DNA, who knows?
And of course, Heinlein doesn't shy away from the darker side of human nature. I mean, we like to think we'd be all welcome to Earth, but let's be real.
Right. The truth is, when something new and potentially valuable comes along, our first instinct isn't always to understand it. Sometimes it's to control it, to use it for our own gain, even if it means bending the rules a little. Or a lot.
Exactly. And that's where things start to get a little, shall we say, morally ambiguous. Like, we've got Ben Caxton, this journalist who becomes kind of an unlikely hero in all of this.
He's this old school reporter, driven by the truth, and he smells a rat.
Yeah, he starts digging around and realizes that the government is playing some seriously shady games with Smith.
Manipulating him, feeding him propaganda, basically trying to turn him into their puppet.
Talk about a conspiracy. And of course, Caxton can't let that stand, so he decides to expose them.
Right. He becomes this voice of dissent, this thorn in the side of the establishment. And you know what? It's kind of inspiring seeing this one guy standing up for what's right, even though he knows he's up against a force way bigger than him.
It's that classic David and Goliath story, you know? Speaking of complicated situations, poor Jill. I mean, talk about being caught in the crossfire.
She's walking this tightrope the whole time. On one hand, she's falling for Smith. She sees his innocence, his goodness. But on the other hand, she also sees how easily he could be exploited.
And she's torn between protecting him, guiding him through this crazy new world, and also trying to figure out her own feelings.
Right. It's like, can you truly love someone and also use them to further your career at the same time? Can you compartmentalize like that? It's a tough one.
Yeah, no easy answers there. Okay, and then there's this whole thing with the fake Man from Mars broadcast. What in the world?
It's wild, right? The government stages this whole elaborate hoax. They get an actor to impersonate Smith, put him on TV, and feed the public all this bogus information.
It's like something out of a dystopian novel. I mean, it makes you realize how easily we can be manipulated, how desperate we are for easy answers, even if they're completely made up.
It's that old saying, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. And with the media, things just spread like wildfire.
Okay, let's switch gears for a sec and talk about Smith's abilities, because let's face it, this guy's not just a regular dude, right? He's got some serious powers.
We're talking telekinesis, healing. He can even discorporate people. I mean, it makes you wonder, is it science? Is it magic? Is it something in between?
Right, like how do you even explain that stuff?
I think that's what makes it so compelling. Heinlein takes these seemingly supernatural abilities and grounds them in Smith's Martian understanding of the universe, of reality itself.
Like it's all connected and Smith just taps into that connection in a way that we humans can't even fathom.
Exactly. For him, it's not about breaking the laws of physics. It's about understanding them on a deeper level, seeing the connections that we miss. Remember how we talked about grokking? This is like grokking on steroids.
Okay, that scene where Harshaw pulls a gun on Smith, I almost choked on my coffee.
Intense, right? It's such a powerful moment because it highlights this fundamental clash between the human way of dealing with conflict, with violence, and Smith's Martian pacifism, and the fact that the gun just disappears. I mean, talk about a metaphor.
It's like Heinlein is saying you can't fight this kind of power with brute force. It just won't work.
Exactly. Smith represents a different way of being in the world, one based on understanding, empathy, connection.
Which brings us to another pivotal scene. That conversation between Smith and Harshaw about God.
Oh man, thou art God. Chills every time.
It's like this huge turning point in the story. Smith finally articulates his understanding of the divine, this idea that God isn't some external entity, but a presence within everything, everyone.
And you can almost see the gears turning in Harshaw's head as he tries to wrap his mind around it.
I love how even Harshaw, this cynical old curmudgeon, is challenged by Smith's perspective.
It's like Smith's innocence, his pure way of seeing the world. It forces everyone around him to confront their own beliefs, their own prejudices.
And that's what makes this book so brilliant. It's not just about aliens and spaceships, it's about us. It's about what it means to be human, to connect with each other, to grapple with these big existential questions.
And to wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's talk about those water brother shenanigans.
I mean, it sounds kind of weird at first, right? This Martian dude going around offering everyone water.
But when you understand the significance of water to Martians, the whole grokking thing, it takes on this really profound meaning.
It's like this beautiful gesture of acceptance, of connection.
And it's fascinating to see how this simple ritual evolves as Smith starts the Church of All Worlds. It becomes this central practice, this way for people to connect with each other on this deeper level, to embrace this Martian philosophy of love and unity.
But like all good things, it can't last forever, right?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Can something this pure, this idealistic, survive in a world as messy and complicated as ours?
All right, so we're back. And things are about to get really, really interesting with this whole stranger in a strange land situation. Remember how Smith started that Church of All Worlds thing? Well, they've got this whole inner circle, this place called the Nest, and
Yeah, this is where Heinlein really cranks up the weird, like we're talking about taping Smith's teachings about love and sharing and grokking and like really pushing the boundaries of what's considered, socially acceptable.
right, like they're trying to create this whole new way of being human based on Martian principles, and it gets kind of wild.
Totally. Free love, communal living, totally different ways of dealing with conflict. It makes you think, could this actually work? Could we actually build a society based on these ideas?
And Ben Caxton, our intrepid journalist, he's caught right in the middle of it all.
Even though he's pretty sympathetic to Smith and what he's trying to do, even Caxton starts to get a little freaked out by what he sees in the Nest.
I mean, can you blame him? This is some seriously radical stuff.
Exactly. It challenges everything he thought he knew about relationships, about society, about life itself. And to make matters even more complicated, he's still crazy in love with Jill, who is, of course, deeply involved with the Nest.
Oh man, talk about a recipe for disaster.
Right. You've got this love triangle, this clash of ideologies, and then you've got Jubal Harshaw watching everything unfold with this mix of amusement and concern. He's like the wise old owl observing human nature at its most extreme.
I love how Harshaw is always there offering these little nuggets of wisdom, kind of like a Greek chorus,
Totally. He's seen it all, so he knows that even with the best of intentions, things can go sideways fast.
And well, that's kind of what happens, isn't it?
Yeah, without giving too much away, let's just say that Smith's attempts to share his Martian wisdom, his message of love and peace, well, it doesn't go exactly as planned.
Yeah. Things get real fast. And it's heartbreaking because you see how much Smith genuinely wants to help humanity, how much he believes in us, even when we don't deserve it.
Right. He comes to Earth with this pure heart, this innocent desire to connect with his fellow humans, and ultimately, that's what leads to his downfall.
It's tragic, but it's also a powerful reminder that even the most beautiful, the most idealistic visions can be twisted and corrupted.
It makes you think about the nature of good and evil, about the dark side of human nature that seems to always find a way to rear its ugly head.
So where does that leave us? What's the takeaway from all of this?
I think Heinlein wants us to grapple with these questions, like, is true utopia even possible? Or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes, to sabotage ourselves with our own flaws?
Man, tough questions. And Heinlein doesn't give us any easy answers.
Nope. He leaves us with more questions than answers. But maybe that's the point, right? To make us think, to make us question,
Right.
to make us uncomfortable.
To challenge us to be better, maybe.
Exactly. Because if we can learn anything from Stranger in a Strange Land, it's that we still have a lot of growing to do.
Well said. And on that note, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Stranger in a Strange Land. I hope you enjoyed the ride, even though it was a bit bumpy at times. Remember, keep exploring, keep asking those big questions, and most importantly, keep grokking the universe. We'll see you on the next deep dive.